Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I'm your host, Moose, and this is my producer, Nick. Our main discussion is about Islam in the 21st century. However, we will critique other religions and ideologies. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. We do, however, embrace many perspectives and free speech if it is factual and correct, and not based on any hate. Throughout the show, we will be exploring different religious beliefs, practices, and their impact on society, ranging from politics, interpersonal relationships, and mental health of believers and non-believers. We hope to create an open dialogue for those who feel they're not heard, especially those who have doubts and have left their belief systems. If you are interested in exploring the complex topic of religion and wish to be part of an honest and open dialogue, this is the show for you. We also welcome feedback and discussion from our audience and listeners. The Gin and Tonic Show is a free speech platform where you can express your ideas without any fear of violence and repercussions or any consequences. Please do join our discussion in the live chat as well as the comments. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
Hello and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I am your host, and I am joined by a very well-mannered, very well-cultured, very nice and respectful cultured Ginny.
Hello, everyone.
And
I'm
yes,
here to say that it is complicated, but this time I'm not sure I will. Of course, it really isn't.
yeah, I think I would still need to have my stick dipped in Zamzam water just in case the devil's advocate comes out. And we are joined by Nick as well, the epitome of masculinity.
Oh no, this is still there from my Andrew Tate stuff last week.
Well, I apologize, Jimmy. I had to make you go through that last time alone.
Yeah, I put the link to the article in the private chat, and I have guests over, so I might have to bounce any minute with. I have
No worries. No worries. Yeah, last week I was also super busy with family related stuff, and it was kind of more conflict related, if anything. So yeah, I had to go. So I do apologize for dipping out.
Oh no worries. You didn't have to deal with Andrew Tate like Culture Chinny had to. If anything, you got to apologize to him.
So sorry, Jidney. So sorry you had to go through that alone.
To be honest, reading through this document was worse than we are going to go through.
So I'll give you a little break today, though, from the document. But I'll go back to the document. And Nick, sorry I cut you off. What were you saying?
And I was going to say, we'll get through as much of the document as we can today as well. But if it doesn't work, we'll meet up I'm going to come over to your place and we're going to review the rest at your place. I'm going to record everything and release it as a midweek episode.
Also, apparently, I think a family member of mine is trying to reach out to you in regards to a business request. So I think it would work out perfectly if you come over tomorrow.
If it's a marriage proposal, I'm saying
no. It's not a marriage proposal, but it is different regarding your skills as a photographer.
Yeah, I'll bring my camera.
Yes, do bring your camera, okay? So yeah, I will. I will go through the article that I really wanted to talk about today. It's happening in Gaza, that is. And I know in this channel we haven't talked much about Palestine, Israel, and the sorts. So Think of this as sort of like a brief intro to this. I might do a longer episode regarding the complex situation of the region itself.
It is complex, but I will probably more defend the Palestinians than I will defend the Israelis, just to make that clear.
Moose, but I think before we even delve into the article, we got to give a disclaimer of what our personal opinions are on this topic, just to clarify for the audience.
That would be good.
And not only that, my personal, our personal views are not, based on hate. We're just examining what we see. And also, disclaimer, we're not taking any side. We will not be taking a side.
So Musa, first of all, I think you should go with your opinion, because especially you deal with a lot of immigrants and refugees from that area, right?
Yes.
So
and I deal in refugee law, and most of my clients are Palestinians, from the region of Palestine, a few from Israel, but generally from Palestine. So I am indeed a bit more sympathetic to the Palestinian citizens. I am sympathetic. I'm not sympathetic to, let's just say, the ruling power of Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. I'm also not sympathetic towards the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces. I'm not necessarily sympathetic to them. The people I have different views on, because again, it's a little more complicated. My view overall is that, this is a complex issue, but I have seen people either take a Palestinian side or an Israeli side, and never, you're condemned by either or, as either you're either an anti-Zionist or an anti-Semite, or you're labeled as, either or, like anti-Semite, or a pro-Israeli, like, Israeli government pays you, you're pro-Jewish, blah blah blah. So
one thing I would have to mention here, and I think it's partially my view, is you got to do a bipartisan of the Jewish people and the Israeli government, right?
No, absolutely.
I can agree with, but my view is that, might I add my view on this? My view is that there are issues on both sides, but I wouldn't say that I'm generally in the middle. I'm a little bit more on the Palestinian side, but not by much, because I will say that both sides have serious issues. But generally, because I don't think that the Palestinians have the same potential right now, at least, to cause the same harm as I see Israel being able to, and actually going in that sort of direction like I'm seeing currently with Israel.
Yeah, and if I can give my personal opinion, is so I listened to the Lex Friedman podcast where he interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu, and I forgot the other gentleman's name, but he also did an interview where he talked about this briefly with Yuval Noah Harari as well. So I've seen all three interviews and discussions on this topic, and then I've researched this extensively. So I would have to say my personal view is that I like to separate the Israeli government from the Jewish people. If the Israeli government, I think, is an apartheid state ruling solely on the base of race, quite similar to what the South Africans did. But if Israel, and I definitely think the Israeli government does need some reform, but Israel as a country does cease to exist, all the Jews of Israel would no longer have a home within that vicinity. Because no other country in that area would be able to take care of them, considering they're all looking at killing these guys in their holy book, and the actual people have such animosity towards the Jews themselves. So I'm in that aspect, I'm actually sympathetic for the Jews as well, where if Israel, a state, doesn't have such militaristic capabilities, those people will cease to exist. But the government itself is a very much an apartheid state and is fighting an enemy who has no problems using children as shields. So I think that Hamas is definitely a terrorist organization, but so is the Israeli government as an apartheid state. And to anyone who says that who doesn't say both are oppressive, I think is very ignorant of the situation, who pick party sides like they're at like an election, as opposed to actually seeing that both terrorist organization and apartheid state are using their humans as shields.
I have actually generally avoided the issue of Palestine and Israel on my channel because going into these issues, it becomes so loaded and so fraught with dangers of polarization on one side or the other that you can't really discuss it without getting bogged down in various conflicts and various arguments about A, B, and C in very polarized, very black and white terms in many regards. This isn't a conflict that is very, very black and white. It's a conflict with serious amounts of issues.
And this is where I would also have to give context too. Like Palestine, I know some people say Palestine doesn't exist. Officially, they're called the Occupied Palestinian Authorities. So the Palestinian territories, my apologies. One, the Gaza region, the Gaza Strip, the tiny little Gaza Strip, has been ruled by Hamas since 2007. And the West Bank region has been ruled by the Palestinian Authority, which is somewhat internationally recognized. But they're also, correct me if I'm wrong, they're former members of PLO, that is, Palestinian Liberation Organization, so I'm not 100% sure. But yes, and currently speaking, there is also a new group has emerged called the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which has emerged within Gaza and has had conflicts with Israel, that is, as of recent. I will definitely dedicate an episode to discussing the entire, today's conflict, as well as, the history behind it, too. So I will definitely dedicate it. But just to give you a context, these are the divisions. When you talk about Gaza, and then when you talk about West Bank, these are two separate entities, territories. And then in the middle, we have Israel, that is, as a region. And so this is the background I've given. Now let's proceed. Are you guys ready? Let's proceed to the article itself. And this is just a news item that I'm covering today, because I feel like this is very important. This is not getting enough attention. I do realize it's from Times of Israel, but I've also seen other websites that did cover this. So on July 30th, thousands of people throughout the Gaza Strip took to the streets demanding better living conditions in a rare display of public anger against the Hamas regime. So this is relatively a very rare scenario that the people of Palestine are actually protesting the Hamas regime itself. The following Friday, August 4th, hundreds of people rallied again in various parts of the enclave. Protesters were rallying under the slogan, "We want to live." The same slogan that was used in last round of protests in March and April of 2019. So this has happened before. The demonstrations have been organized by an anonymous Instagram account under the name of Al-Virus Al-Sakhir, or the Mocking Virus, which has 160,000 followers. Various anti-Hamas activists in exile have joined the campaign, urging Gazans to take the streets and demand a better standard of living. So Gaza in itself, because it has a blockade, it has it's inside an enclave, there's limited fuel, there's limited food, there's not even a lot of jobs either in Gaza, except working for Hamas. Those are the kind of jobs that are available. So,
by the way, might I?
Yes, you may add something. Yes.
Might I add something? There is a channel that is called Peace Process, with a B. Peace Process. It is a joke on the fact that Arabic doesn't have the P sound.
Oh, okay.
And it's a channel that details a lot of the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
Yes.
I know the channel owner, by the way.
Oh, okay.
He makes good content.
Yeah, so I can definitely
have him come on the show if you can. That would be a great addition to be on the show as well too. But yes, what do you call it? What's his channel name again?
Peace process.
Bees Process.
Yes.
Okay, so can you type it in the comments?
Yeah. Yes. Here I go.
All right. And while you do that, we'll get back to the article.
Here it is. Bees
Okay.
process.
Okay, Bees Bros. Oh, it's P. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so this is something you guys should definitely check out. Bees Broses. It's a play on words, yes, like Ginny said, on the P sound that doesn't exist in Arabic. So anyway, back to the article. Given the near complete absence of free media in the Strip, it is difficult for outside analysts to gauge how many people participated in the latest round of protests. According to videos circulated on social media, numbers seem to be significantly larger in the first demonstration than in the second, when Hamas's security apparatus adopted preventative measures. Now, Hamas did indeed crack down on these protests. Protests were scheduled to take place once again throughout the Strip on Monday. However, Hamas came prepared to thwart them. In all locations where we announced that gatherings would take place, there was a heavy presence of civilian and military security and police cars everywhere, a source inside Gaza told Times of Israel on Tuesday. Whenever two people were walking together, they were forbidden to stop on the street for even a minute by the security forces, would go up to them and tell them, "Get out of there, or we will take you with us." But on social media, at least, it appears that the protest movement is maintaining its momentum. People are much more outspoken against Hamas on social media today than they were 10 or 5 years ago, said Rami Aman, a prominent Gazan peace activist living in Cairo, and a critic of the damn it with these ads. Darn it, sorry. There we go. A prominent peace activist living in Cairo and a critic of the terror group that rules the enclave. Back then, people would not dare to make their opinions heard online for fear of retaliation. Aman, the founder of grassroots youth empowerment group called the Gaza Youth Committee, was arrested by Hamas several times for his activism, including one 7-month imprisonment in 2020, after he organized a Zoom meeting between Gazans and Israelis. Hamas considered this a criminal act. So you see, even any form of protest or any form of attempt to dialogue is sort of seen as a criminal act. Aman has been living in Cairo since December 2021, but still keeps in contact with activists inside the enclave, and it's highly critical of Hamas's treatment of the population. Today, if you look at the official social media pages of Hamas and its ministries, you find a plethora of critical comments, with people writing openly from their Facebook accounts, showing their name and profile picture. He said, "You will find more positive comments on the Facebook page of the coordinator than on the pages of Hamas these days," he said, referencing the Israeli Defense Ministry body Israeli Defense Ministry body responsible for Palestinian civil affairs. There is not a single family in Gaza that has not suffered at the hands of Hamas in one way or the other. Because of arrests or persecution, people are tired of having no opportunities and no way out. The only way to make a decent living is to be affiliated with Hamas. If you want to apply for a government job, you need a letter from your mosque, he explained. In the meantime, the Hamas leadership live in nice villas, drive expensive cars, and eat at fancy restaurants. And the top leaders, of course, don't live in Gaza at all. This is interesting, actually. The top leaders not even living in Gaza. Protests. Now, popular discontent with the Hamas regime in Gaza has been simmering for years, since the group wrested control of the coastal strip from the Fatah-run Palestinian. Yes, Fatah is the one that runs Palestinian Authority. Since 2007, large-scale protests have taken place on several occasions. Most recently, April 25th, January 27th, and again in 2019. Each time, they were repressed by Hamas security forces and did not lead to any significant changes for the local population. The current round of popular outrage was sparked by the accidental killing by local authorities of a resident of Khan Yunis, Shadi Abu Quta, on July 27. Abu
Doesn't
Quta,
shoddy mean marriage?
that's Shadi, not Shadi. Shadi, that's the stretch.
Yeah.
You have to do the stretch.
My bad.
I know your mind is thinking in Hindi again, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, and when are we doing the episode where we make you a shoddy.com profile?
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that episode, boy.
Looking for a good Muslim Shia boy for Mustafa to marry.
And just to make it a boy, right? Just to you're gonna probably end up pissing off the Shadi.com or the Muslim community. But yes, Hamas. What do you call it? Where was I? Oh yes. Abu Qutta became trapped under a wall of his own house as it was being demolished by a municipality bulldozer, with authorities alleging the wall impinged on a public road. Abu Qutta died while holding in his hand a document proving his ownership of the building as authorities proceeded to demolish it. Hamas swiftly condemned the incident in an official statement, fired the mayor of Khan Yunis, and later paid compensation money to the family. But as video of the incident spread on social media, spontaneous protests broke out in the city. In one video, a man was seen holding a black abaya, a full woman's body dress that he found on the street, shouting, let the man who accepts this injustice and says that he is pro-Hamas come to me, and I will put this dress on him. To the woman of Khan Yunis who threw this dress, good for you. This is kind of funny, actually. I will put this dress on you. Rami Aman explained that Khan Yunis is somewhat an exception in the strip as its residents are mostly native Gazans. This contrasts with the rest of the enclave, where 2/3 of the population are descendants of Palestinian refugees from 1948. Khan Yunis has historically been opposed to the rule of Hamas, Aman noted. Following the demolition incident, social media activists took to the internet and declared a day of rage. Some accounts called it an outright for a revolution. On Sunday, July 30th, demanding an end to the strip's electricity shortage and calling for the disbursement of salary arrears to government workers. On the afternoon of July 30th, marches took place throughout Gaza, with protesters chanting shame against the regime. Demonstrators waved Palestinian flags, while some were filmed tearing up the Hamas flag. In one case, some people reportedly burned the group's banner before security services quickly intervened to break up the gathering. So I think this is a video of people burning the Hamas banner or tearing it up. So this is the video. Hamas security forces were caught off guard, did not crack down heavily on the July 30th demonstrations. While most rallies ended peacefully, a few incidents were recorded in Khan Yunis, the town, where police reportedly destroyed the cell phones of bystanders who were filming, and confrontations were set to break out in several instances between Hamas supporters and opponents. Hamas supporters promptly accused protest organizers of being agents of the Israeli Mossad security agency. Of course they would. Or possibly of the Mukhabarat, the security services of the Ramallah-based Palestinian Authority. So quick to blame anybody from the outside, either from Ramallah or from Israel. Activists were quick to point out that the protest movement is independent and is not financed or controlled by anyone outside Gaza. The only motive behind it is to demand electricity, work, food, dignity, and basic rights like citizens of any other country. Various opposition sources reported that the number of demonstrators had been injured and that Hamas forces stormed a hospital in Rafah, kidnapped 3 opponents who had been taken in to treat injuries. One journalist, Walid Abdul Rahman, was assaulted by Hamas security forces while he was filming a demonstration in the Jabalia refugee camp and forced to stop reporting. The incident was condemned by the International Federation of the Arab Press, which demanded journalistic freedom and accountability for the perpetrators. The preparation, so I'm not necessarily surprised that, Hamas is just, cracking down like this. In preparation for the following round of protests on August 4th, Hamas rounded up dozens of activists in the base prior, according to local activists. Videos on social media showed Hamas security forces deploying in large numbers throughout the strip on Friday morning, hours before the start of the protest. Hamas also rallied its own base and organized counter-protests in support of the regime. Now there's rebuke from other Palestinian factions. So again, this kind of shows that the issue is not as black and white. Like, it shows that how complicated the issue is. That even the Palestinians are not in support of the Hamas Authority. Various anti-Hamas Palestinians.
Yeah, that's a slightly false statement you made there, because the American Palestinians are always in favor of Hamas.
Which American Palestinians?
You go to any college campus and they're always saying that Hamas are like freedom fighters and such.
Oh yes, those ones, yes, on the college campuses.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, it's especially like, oh man, that I remember.
They are Swedish college. They are Swedish university campuses as well.
Yeah, that they say Hamas the freedom fighters.
Yes.
Oh, so cringe, so cringe. It's honestly so cringe. Like, most of the refugee cases I deal with were people abused by Hamas. So it's quite funny that people call them freedom fighters. But then again, people call Taliban freedom fighters too from Afghanistan. So I'm not necessarily surprised too much. Because there were people in Pakistan cheering for Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan recently. Oh, man. But yes, various anti-Hamas Palestinian political forces condemned terror groups' response to the spontaneous uprising. The Palestinian Democratic Union, FIDA, and the Socialist Palestinian People's Party, 2 smaller parties affiliated with the PLO, issued statements denouncing the use of force by Hamas to disperse the protesters, emphasizing the right of the citizens to peaceful demonstration and urging Hamas to start tackling Gaza's numerous problems. Salim al-Bardania, Secretary General of the Palestinian Arab Front, another nationalist faction affiliated with the PLO, did not mince words. In an interview with the Voice of Palestine radio station, he said, Hamas sucks the blood of our people in the Gaza Strip through its rule over it and the transfer of its money abroad. Hamas, since its coup against the legitimate ruler, the Palestinian Authority, has not made any improvement to the infrastructure of the Gaza Strip and has not been able to provide the basic services that our people are deprived of, such as electricity, al-Bardani added. The uprising of the people of Gaza against Hamas is not surprising even for those who voted for them in the 2006 elections, he said, referencing the last elections held in Palestinian authorities, because Hamas eventually reneged all of their slogans. Now, there's a question of timing. On July 3rd, the July 30th marches occurred while Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was in Egypt, attending a reconciliation meeting of Palestinian factions organized by Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Fatah group. By the way, there are various groups within Palestine do also have conflict with each other or do butt heads a lot too. It is not by chance that the timing of the protest coincided with the summit of the Palestinian factions in Egypt, said Muqamer Abu Salah, a professor of political science at Gaza's Al-Azhar University, in an interview with the Times of Israel. Gazans took the streets to demand from the leadership an end to the division between Fatah in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza. The situation in Gaza today is not as bad as what is in March 2019, when the last large-scale protest took place. Then, the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah had demanded that Israel reduce the supply of electricity to Gaza as a punitive measure against Hamas, he noted. So yes, Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, which is in the West Bank, is seen as an ally of Israel. But in the last 4 years, Qatar has been footing the electricity bill for Gaza, while also donating $30 million each month to subsidize the salaries of Hamas government employees and provide aid to poor families, and the situation has somewhat improved, Abu Sada said. Now, still, 70% of Gazan population receives food aid from international humanitarian organizations, and unemployment stands at 45%. The work permits granted by Israel to about 17,000 Gazan laborers are only a drop in the ocean. He said every year tens of thousands of young Gazans finish college, but they have no employment opportunities and nowhere else to go. What the young people were protesting was the division between Hamas and Fatah. Almost all Palestinians in Gaza believe that the misery they live in, the poverty and unemployment, is the result of the political schism and the separation between Gaza and the West Bank. They want their leaders to hear the message, Abu Sada said. He predicted, however, that the protest movement would soon die out, which, again, usually happens with protests, and which is unfortunate. And under the regime that does not allow for political dissent, electricity has become the rallying cause for the citizens to express their grievances. And I'm not surprised. Like, you cannot function without electricity most of the day, especially in the heat. Gaza, with the population of over 2.3 million, receives much of its electricity supply from Israel, with the single local power plant supplying the rest. But demand far outweighs the supply, leading to severe limitations and shortages. Hamas has repeatedly blamed Gaza's infrastructure woes on the blockade imposed by Israel since 2007, which has crippled its economy, imposed severe restrictions on its imports, and left the enclave isolated from the rest.
So, Moose, I'm just going to have to drop out.
No problem.
All right, take care.
No, take care. Israel imposed its blockade after the terror group took control of the territory to limit its ability to arm itself for attacks on Israel. Neighboring Egypt has also implemented the blockade from its side. So it's both Egypt and Israel have sort of like restricted, imposed sanctions on the Gaza Strip. The Gaza power plant has never been used at full capacity. 3 generators supply the enclave with electricity. Seriously, just 3 generators? While the 4th is used as an emergency backup when others break down, Abu Sada said. Constant power outages cause severe distress for residents of the Strip, with food spoiling in refrigerators, people having to live and work in scorching heat up to 38 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit this summer, with only intermittent air conditioning, and wastewater treatment plants dumping untreated water into the sea, causing major pollution in both in Gaza and the adjacent Israeli beaches. About 3 weeks ago, Abdul Hamid Abdul Ati, a journalist with local Al-Watan radio, started a campaign on social media titled 4th Generator to pressure local authorities to solve the ongoing power crisis. In an interview with Al Monitor, the journalist raised doubts about whether Hamas makes proper use of the money it collects from Gaza's residents for electricity. So you see, this is quite the issue over here. Zafar Malham, chairman of PA's Energy Authority in Ramallah, which foots the bill for the electricity feed to Gaza from Israel declared to Al Monitor, a Washington, D.C. based news site, that Hamas run electricity company in Gaza collects
Moose,
35 to
before
40
I leave, Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali has a question for you. I saw this as I was leaving.
Oh, come on, Kanye West says to like Hamas. Does he claim that? Has anybody claimed that? God damn. Jesus Christ. Oh man.
And we also have Buddha Bing doing a comment here as well.
Yeah, free Palestine. Yeah, I know. It's just let's try to free it from its woes. Let's try to.
I still remember Kanye West's interview on.
Seriously though, even with everything that Hamas does, again, the Israeli government cutting off, for example, at times the water supply to Gaza and the like haven't been exactly saints themselves.
Oh, for sure. And I get it. Like there is the Israeli government status that, especially the Israeli security forces, their abuses, how they impose sanctions. At the same time, we do have to kind of also address the mismanagement of Hamas itself as a ruling party. And this is something that's rarely covered, especially on news outlets, that is. So it's always nobody dives into the complexity of the issue itself. But a large part, so basically 9.4 to 10.8 million per month from Gazans in electricity bills that they pay, but a large part of that goes unaccounted for. A prominent Hamas opponent living in Europe estimated that only 5 million is needed, 5 million NIS, which is 35, they take 35 to 40 million, I'm not sure what currency. 5 million is needed to operate a power plant on a monthly basis, implying that Hamas embezzles about 30 million. The numbers could not be independently verified. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, though. Qatar has recently stepped in to buy additional fuel to operate the fuel generator. Thanks to Qatar's latest intervention, residents of the enclave now receive electricity for 8 hours at a time, up from 6. Yikes. It's still pretty bad, though. 8 hours, though. Followed by 8 hours of blackout, down from 12. Damn, that's still a lot, though. That's still a long blackout. That's a small improvement, but still. The wealthy monarchy also provides $100 monthly grant to the poorest families in Gaza, which the Hamas administration deducts $15 from. Qatar's role in providing a lifeline to Gaza is seen by many as a double-edged sword. You always see Qatar providing cash assistance to Gaza, rebuilding roads and houses after Israeli attacks. They even built a hospital, but you never see them open a factory, said Rami Ahmed, the Gazan peace activist exiled in Egypt. It's as if they did not want the Gazan economy to develop, as they want to keep us dependent on their aid. A voice of dissent. Of course, this name is Mustafa, not his real name. That's definitely not my real name. Wink, wink. An anti-Hamas activist in his mid-30s living in Gaza, who agreed to speak to Times of Israel by email on condition of total anonymity, described his life in the isolated enclave under the rule of Hamas and the Israeli blockade as an open-air prison. He said that over 70% of youth are unemployment, and an average per capita income per day is $20 or $5.5. Not a lot. Intermittent access to electricity and undrinkable tap water. Life in the enclave is barely livable for the vast majority of citizens who are not somehow tied to Hamas.
Might I add something here?
Yes, you may.
One of the reasons as to why it can become this bad and protests have just now started to erupt against Hamas has to do with the fact that Hamas manages, through the existence of Israel, actually they need Israel to exist in order to justify their own abuses and power. So it's kind of like people turn to Hamas due to the abuses of Israel, but Hamas also abuses the power it gets through this. And through this, it also needs kind of like to step up and escalate so that Israel becomes worse, so that it remains power. So that it remains in power.
Right. So they do need Israel's existence as if to justify.
Yes, as an outer enemy to justify their own existence.
Yeah, this is a very interesting point that you bring up, and I think it's somewhere it's kind of like in the dictator's playbook. That is, like you need an outside enemy, but you're not necessarily going to get rid of that enemy. Like you're going to keep it as sort of like someone to like. It's similar to, I know it's not the same. It's similar to the Pakistani army with the Kashmir issue. That is, that they need the issue to exist to justify their own power, that is, their own funding, like especially the budget that goes to the military to fight India or like prevent India from taking over Kashmir. That's how they justify it.
I can imagine that.
Yeah,
there are similarities.
Yeah, there are similarities. It's not the same. Of course, each will have their own box rabbit holes, for sure. But from kind of just...
I mean, one of the reasons I think a lot of the Arab world focuses so much on the Israel-Palestine conflict, besides the fact that Israel is actually more or less just colonialistically took over a territory away from Arab populations, has to do with the fact that a lot of the rulers of the Arab world need an outer enemy to focus upon.
This is definitely, I can definitely see that, because a lot of, I think, what do you call it? I've heard from like Saudi government or like, the, what do you call it? How that the Lebanon, for example, Lebanon's Hezbollah has its also presence justified because of, an outer enemy such as Israel.
Yeah, Hezbollah is kind of like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, they also... The thing is, with the increased tensions between Sunni and Shias, the focus upon Israel actually decreased. And it was better to focus upon this internal sectarian conflicts within Islam.
Yeah, it does like get brushed under the rug.
You also have to remember that the worst conflicts with Israel was at the height of Arab, often kinda secular nationalism.
Yeah.
When you didn't have a large focus upon religion, then ethnicity took a greater center stage. And the conflict was about that, and thus Israel was a higher priority target.
Right. I remember this was during the 1967 war, I believe.
Yeah, even before that.
Yeah,
ever since Israel was established, it was in the middle of the ascendancy of the Arab nationalist movements. I mean, Israel more or less killed the legitimacy of these movements, considering how much they crushed their opposition.
Yeah, and
in the Arab world, that when they tried to, defeat Israel on the battlefield, they got completely trashed, and thus they lost their legitimacy through that.
And I know there's this something I'll add. There's this narrative that Israel was surrounded and overpowered 3 different nations. That's not the case. Israel's defense forces, the earlier defense forces, I forgot their name, were divisions of the British Army. They did serve under the British Army.
Yeah, and they also had a lot of support from various Western countries as well.
Yes, so they had to
and they had modern weapons in a way that the Arabs that they fought against had not, and they were able to mobilize a bigger part of their population due to financial support.
Yes. And
so it wasn't as this weaker enemy overpowered. No, it wasn't. It was actually a pretty unfair fight in the other direction.
And generally, I've seen this narrative in especially like a lot of pro-Israel pages, a lot of pro-Israel nationalists kind of like make this narrative, which is completely untrue, actually. Like Ginny said, the technology, you had you also, the fighters themselves were also pretty much experienced, battle hardened as well, too. Like they knew how to mobilize their forces, and also funding, also all that did play. So it was uneven, given that the other three nations were at a disadvantage, in a way. So yeah, that was why that the war was in favor of Israel for such a long time, was because these were former British soldiers and worked in the British army, and yeah, then of course support from financial support from Western countries. Now back to the article. This citizen says leaving the strip requires $10,000 to be smuggled out illegally with high chances of dying on the way of freedom, he added. This is all because Gazan civilians are exploited as a pawn in a struggle between regional forces, and Hamas uses its citizens as human shields to defend its project of Islamic resistance, while it silences and threatens to kill any opposition, he continued. And this is something kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Jenny, that it does need Israel to exist. And I think Nikhil was also saying that citizens were used as human shields. A professional who describes himself as a liberal and Democrat interested in human rights, humanitarian issues, and free citizenship, Mustafa estimated that the current wave of demonstration has only just begun, since, in his view, the protesters' demands are not limited to electricity, but aimed ultimately at overthrowing the military regime and the rule of the clerics. So it's kind of like a rule of a combined military combined with religious rulers too. With regard to relations with neighboring Jewish state, Mustafa expressed his wish for a Palestinian government with a new, clear, and rational policies toward Israel and the occupation army without regional alliances. He referred to Iran's support for Hamas and other radical groups. And yes, this is something I actually forgot nearly, that it is well known that Hamas does have support of Iran as well, even though Hamas itself has had conflict with another ally of Iran called Hezbollah. So, and Hamas, yes.
You need to remember something, Mos, about the religious politics of the Middle East, despite all of these talk about Shia, Sunni. Historically, because this isn't something new, you allied always with the most convenient friend against the most pressing enemy, or against the ones that was, power plays and the alliances were more about convenience than they were about religious conviction, always.
And I love how you said friend. Like,
yeah, friend. I mean the Ottoman Empire allied with various Shia entities against the Shia Safavids.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And the Shia, the Safavids, supported various Sunni entities against the Ottomans.
And this is definitely interesting, because I remember, I think it was an article it was in the mid 2000s, and this was an article about the Ayatollah of Iran, and Iran itself having support for Taliban in Afghanistan. Of all the entities, they support Taliban of Afghanistan, which has killed Shia Muslims, by the way.
Yeah.
And Iran also has an alliance with not Azerbaijan, but with Armenia, interestingly enough.
Yes, against Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan has claims, because there exist actually more Azerbaijanis, if I'm not mistaken, in northern Iran than there exists in Azerbaijan.
Yes, and despite that, there's
the Safavids, the people that converted the entirety of the Persian region to 12 Shiism. They came from Azerbaijan. They were of Kilbashi Turkic origin.
So they weren't even Iranian to begin with.
I mean, this isn't something new. You have several Persian dynasties that aren't Iranian.
That's true. That's true. And even technically, the Mughals
I mean,
themselves were
and
Persian.
what do you consider Iranian exactly? They actually did
Yeah.
adopt eventually, a Persian language and began to speak it as court language and abandoned their Turkish language.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they didn't abandon their religion. They instead utilized it in order to, shore up support and
Yeah. I can definitely see that.
centralize the state.
Yeah, I can definitely see like so many Persian dynasties, including like we had the Abbasids as well, who were technically claimed to have Persian allies during the civil war to gather up support. Allegedly, they became more Persianized themselves too, the Abbasids.
The
So
Abbasids were kind of like a combination of the Persian and Arabic culture. Yes,
yes, and
depending
then
also upon age.
yeah, at which age of the Abbasids, and also we had the Mughal Empire, which was actually
Yes,
more
the
Persian.
Ilkhanate.
Yeah, and it was more Persian. The Mughals were more Persians.
But you forget maybe the most important Persian entity in the post the Arabic Islamic invasion, the ones that actually spread and made Persian culture relevant again outside of the Iranian plateau. Do you
Which
know
one?
which entity I'm referring to?
I actually don't. Which ones?
The Seljuks.
Really?
They were the first to actually officialize Persian as a court language
Really?
on a large scale. Yes,
Seljuk Turks.
and in international relations in the Middle East.
Interesting. So Persian was established as a court language by the Seljuks. This is
Yes.
very interesting. Very, very interesting. And
Before it had been Arabic
right.
and some Persian for those dynasties that, for example, the Saffarids that did exist in Persia, but it had been combination Arabic Persian, but Persian had a secondary role. Now Persian became the primary court language.
Oh, by the way, are Saffarids different from Safavids or?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify because I did read about Safavids as well. And this was a different
The
dynasty.
Saffarids were before the Seljuks. They and a couple of other entities were those that broke out from the Abbasids.
Right. This makes it very, very interesting. That is, in terms of like the history, that is, it does get very interesting. That.
But if you look at it, those that broke out from the Abbasids still used Arabic mostly as their court language still.
Yes.
So despite being quote unquote Persian dynasty, it was actually the Seljuks that more or less led to a revival of Persian culture.
Yeah, which makes.
And they were Turks.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes it odd. It's very odd. Even though I've heard that Turkic peoples, that is, they're very widespread. Someone I did was reading that their descent from like Persian status. Again, I could be wrong. I could be very.
I mean, the Turkic peoples have always had contacts. You have to remember that in the past, this is before Islam.
Yeah.
Iranian peoples were steppe peoples, many of them. Not all. Some had already settled on the Iranian plateau, but many Iranic peoples, even the Scythians were an Iranic people.
Right.
The Scythians that were active in Ukraine, but most of them were active in Central Asia. They've always had contact with other nomadic groups, including Turkic, Mongolic, and other Altaic and Uralic peoples.
Right. Okay. And the Scythians are pretty much like extinct at this point. Well, some.
Yeah, most of them. They do have some Hellenic descendants that are existing as a very, very small minority in the Caucasus region right now.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, yeah, it was the Turkic peoples, that reintroduced the Persian language, which is very surprising.
Yeah, but my entire point here is that culture and such are, And also what I told you about before about religious politics and
Yeah,
alliances of on convenience.
yeah,
These
and
things are a lot more complicated than most people think.
and also, like you said, it's the most convenient friend against the most pressing enemy, generally speaking. And again, friend, we're saying in quotation marks. um, but yes, he further elaborates, and back to the article. This is why they demand the most basic rights and improvement on their. Actually, yeah, my bad. Mustafa said, the Israeli side looks at us as terrorists, not as people with dreams and aspirations, Mustafa said. But the reality is quite different. Most of the people of Gaza are innocent civilians living in dire humanitarian conditions. They only dream of a decent life, freedom, justice, peace, and democratic elections. And honestly, that is the part. It is people like you, me, people like us are generally like would definitely be in Gaza at this moment. This is why people took to the streets to demand their most basic rights, an improvement in their living conditions, an end to poverty, unemployment, the lack of water and electricity, and to protest the imposition of power by force, being silenced and spied on. He said, you can divide the people of Gaza in two: a large majority living under the poverty line, and a small ruling elite affiliated with Hamas and other Islamist factions who live off the funding received by the resistance, he added. Again, this is also in quotation marks, just like the friend. From his personal perspective as a peace activist, Mustafa said that these demonstrations do not come out of thin air. In his words, they express the conviction of the Gazan people that peace is the solution. Gazans want an end to the occupation and the Israeli siege, and they want an end to the bloodshed that has been going on for so many years. So yes, this is where we conclude the article, is that, and I do sympathize that the Gazans would want an end to the Israeli siege, as well as, what do you call it, the rule of Hamas. And yeah, I think, Jenny, do you have any thoughts on the article we just went through? Again, I so apologize it took some time.
No, it pretty much sums up the issues that exist with Hamas, and and I think I've already added my mind to it.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going back to the human rights in Islam article. I wanted to ask, which page or which section were you guys on?
I think we were in 13, section 13, I think.
Wait, so this is chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. Section 13. Where is section 13?
Go, if you scroll down on it.
Yeah.
You will eventually see that they are numbered.
Oh, wait. Inclusion. Okay, right to life. Is this what's numbered? This?
Oh, yes, we had just entered. Oh, fuck. Oh God. We were very late in it. We were on page the equality of human beings.
The equality of human beings?
Yes, page 9.
Page 9, okay. Equality of human beings. Okay, this section. Page 9, equality of human beings. Oh, this section. And did you finish this, or did you, what do you call it? Quote unquote.
I don't remember that we finished it. I remember just that we did finish the thing about slavery previously.
And I'm already seeing the most misquoted, what do you call it, hadiths ever. Not just misquoted. This is I know there is a source that says it's some sources do say it's not sahih or weak. That is, so I'm already seeing that. Okay, so it says Islam not only recognizes absolute equality between men, irrespective of any distinction of race, race, or nationality, but it makes it an important and significant principle, a reality. The Almighty God has laid down in the Quran, O mankind, we have created you from a male and female. In other words, all human beings are brothers to one another. Sisters? They are all descendants from one father, and what? Oh man! And as we set you up in nations and tribes, so that you may be able to recognize each other. Boy, what that was not a very good reason to create nations and tribes, because nations and tribes is more of a human construct. Though the God didn't do this, even if it existed. It's more of a very human construct, and it also just happened based on regional differences. This means that the division of human beings into nations, races, and tribes is for the sake of distinction, so that people of one race or tribe may meet and be acquainted with the people belonging to another race or tribe and cooperate with one another. Boy, does this is not a very good reason. This is definitely not, because
no, if anything, creating different tribes and groups hinders that.
Yeah, if anything.
And
yes, go ahead.
I mean, the classical view on this in Islamic traditions is pretty much that they take the Babel view of it from the biblical traditions.
The biblical tradition, yes.
About the Tower of Babel falling down, people's pride causing various languages and thus.
Yeah, Babel.
Various groups.
I know in Arabic it's called Babel, right? Tower of Babel or Babel?
Babel, yeah.
Babel, yes. And people started, fighting with each other because they couldn't understand each other, and that's how tribes were created, because man was trying to reach the heavens. And it was such a ridiculous story, and then when you think about it, assuming that happened, that's not it kind of contradicts with this, because you're creating rice and trade so you can cooperate and recognize each other, but this creation was a result of conflicts because you couldn't understand each other, and you tried to reach God, so God punished you for this. So this is kind of a punishment. So it's so weird. The message is very weird. This is because he says here, now this division of the human race is neither meant for one nation to take pride in its superiority over others, nor it is meant for one nation to treat another with contempt or disgrace, to regard them as a means and degraded race and usurp their rights. Boy, oh boy, some Islamic scholars would disagree with this, man. For sure. I think I did have a quote from an Islamic scholar. What do you call it? In regards to Arab supremacy, that is. And
I mean, you do have the fact that the Quraysh are the only ones that can get the title of caliph, and that you also have special provisions for the family and descendants of Ahlul Bayt.
Yes, and definitely you have this is where the issue comes up. Like, I think Muhammad, there was a hadith by Muhammad saying that what was it? It was something about like the Quraysh will be caliphs or something like that, will rule the Islamic world.
Yes, those things. That's the basis for that. Yes.
Yeah. 1 second. Let me just see.
Do not set forth anyone before the Quraysh in something. If I'm not.
Yeah. So I did.
Wrong.
Yeah. I know I did. Where is it? Damn it. Okay, where is it? Arab supremacy. I just have to search. Okay, I think it was on why I left Islam. Yeah, sorry guys. Pedophilia. Random see the word pedophilia. Oh yes, Arab supremacy. I did do something on Arab supremacy in one of my reasons as to why I left, and this was so here. So there we go. So it says here, I actually noted by Ibn Taymiyyah, by the way, he's called Sheikh al-Islam. According to Sahih Muslim 30:565-3, the people of Kinana, the Quraysh and Bani Hashim have preference over anyone else. I think this is what you were referring to, the hadith. And Ibn Taymiyyah, a famous Islamic scholar, in Iqtida al-Sirat al-Mustaqim, he says the Arabs are more intelligent than those other themselves and are more capable in delivery and expression. Verily, what the people of the Sunnah are upon is the belief that the Arab people of the Sunnah, by the way, are, which is, people who believe in the Sunnah, are of the belief that the Arab race is better than the non-Arab race. Whether the non-Arabs are Hebrews, Aramaic, Romans, Persians, and other than them, not simply due to the fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is from them, even though this is a point of superiority, but instead they themselves are superior within themselves. For Allah the Most High has designated the Arabs and their language with rulings that are peculiar and unique. So this is the kind of supremacy that is preached in what do you call it? The religion. Yes, Ginny, you had something?
Yeah, and I could, give history about the various views about Arab supremacy that existed from the, Umayyads to the Abbasids.
Yeah.
Because even if the Abbasids did ease up a lot on it, they still continued a lot of it too.
Yeah, I think wasn't one of also Omar's rulings too regarding how a non-Arab cannot be
Yes.
a ruler over an Arab or the Malik
Yes.
of an Arab or something. Yeah.
Yes, both Omar and Uthman had those policies as well.
And this is from like whom we call, again, I know we're judging historical figures by modern standards,
Yeah.
but the claim is that they are, if you're saying they're the rightly guided caliphs, this is done by the rightly guided caliphs. That speaks volumes, that is, especially for a religion that is supposed to be the final message to humanity. That's kind of poor, that is. So and again, I will say this: Omar and Osman weren't the prophet. So this is, even though it's not an example, I'll give you that point. If you say, "Oh, Muhammad didn't say this," sure, I'll give you that. But these are rightly guided caliphs. These are close companions of Muhammad, representatives of Muhammad, so to speak. So it does speak volumes. So this claim that the human race being like created equal does fall a bit flat. But he's not necessarily wrong with the verse. Regard them, usurp their rights. Indeed, the noblest amongst you before God are the most heedful of you. Heedful. I am gonna just, because man, this requires a good analysis. As you know, we need to look up some facts as well too. Chapter 49, verse 13. It's also called the apartments. Interesting. Al-Hujrat. Yeah, so 49:13 says, "O mankind, indeed we created you from male and female imagination so that you may know each other. The most noblest of you near Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is to all knower and all aware." So it does sound nice.
Might I look at it?
You want to look at the verse?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just screen share it.
Yeah.
Top screen. Because you can look at the corpus and you can look at the Arabic itself too.
Yes.
So here, 49:13, Yahya an-Nasas, you can read.
Yeah. Yeah. لتعرفوا
Allah alayhim.
Yeah, the term they use here is lita'arafu.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to experience each other.
Interesting.
I
So
would
it's
rather
not a-
translate it as too.
it's not know one another, but rather experience one another.
The problem here is in modern Arabic,
Yeah,
the root arafa has to do with knowledge
right,
and knowing. But
right.
in older Arabic, it has to do with practicality and experiencing things.
Yeah, right.
So experience, knowledge from experience was where it began to be used as for practical knowledge, things you
Right.
had experienced, and then it moved on and became general knowledge
Okay, so it's
in
more of,
modern Arabic.
yes, it's more of getting to know in the terms of knowledge or experience. That is.
Yes.
Rather
So it
than
doesn't actually. It doesn't actually. Here, I would probably argue that it's the translator that is more, familiar with modern Arabic usage
right. Yeah. So he
and
could.
translated it.
Yeah, because he could have the translator. Because even the Riyadi says you may know one another, and even Sahih International says you may know one another. So they could be using modern translation to
Yes.
in this context, but rather the context in ancient Arabic would be a bit different. How it would be understood. So this is an interesting point you bring up. These little things do matter. So back to the article. But thank you, Janito. Thank you so much for clarifying this.
And by the way,
Yes.
also that they translate al-hujarat as apartments
Yeah.
rather than the stone buildings.
Yeah. What is up with that? Why did they translate it to the apartments?
I mean, you did have apartment buildings in southern Arabia. You might remember my video about Sana'a, right?
Yes. Yes.
They probably had those high-rise buildings even back in the age of Islam,
Yeah.
most probably. And you will see something very fantastic tomorrow about a certain building in pre-Islamic Sana'a. But that's spoiler for tomorrow
Oh,
on my
okay.
channel.
I'm gonna look forward to a video tomorrow.
And it's going to be fantastic. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think apartments is not a good translation there either.
So you would say stone buildings or stone,
Yes.
right, would be a better translation of the surah name itself,
Yes.
rather than okay. So I think there is.
But I
something
mean,
with
because
modern-
that could be anything. That could also be smaller stone buildings and not.
yeah,
I mean, these issues like these, it is probably because the translator is familiar with modern standard Arabic and has
Yeah.
read the Quran using the lens of modern Arabic. But I mean, it creates issues when you then translate it, or rather in the initial understanding.
yeah. So it does. What do you call it? It does, like, these tiny little words do change the meaning itself too. So it definitely what do you call it? Yeah, it does.
Anyway, these text argues that it is to get to know each other, which isn't. It is to get to experience each other.
Yes, yes. There's also like what do you call it? There was 1 second. I actually wanted to see if this was Maudu fabricated hadith. The knowledge. Sorry, I just got distracted. Yes, so the farewell sermon. The farewell sermon itself, that has the all mankind was from Adam and Eve, and there's no superiority. Apparently, it's from SFH Zaidi, an Indian Islamist. Okay, So I'm just going to read it here. So, because this, I'm kind of also going to skip some words because, again, reading every single letter is going to be a bit long. That his claim is superiority is piety and pure conduct. Now, he says this has been exemplified by the Prophet in saying, no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab, nor does an Arab have any superiority over an Arab, nor does a white man have superiority over a black man superiority over a white man. You're all children of Adam, and Adam was created from clay. Now he claims that in this manner, Islam established equality for all humans. It's like he hasn't done his research because, I will from.
No, he has just said whatever PC thing he could that is good and applied it to Islam.
Yeah, because what do you call it? I think ex-Muslims of North America have a page called Wiki Islam, and they actually list some of the false hadiths or fabricated hadiths.
I would actually disrecommend Wiki Islam. I don't like that site though.
Though to be fair, they're kind of like
they can be right at times, but I've seen things there that shouldn't be ever trusted.
Yeah. So again, let's take this with a grain of salt. So they mentioned the last sermon, right? And in the last sermon, we have all mankind is from Adam, and Arab has no, or non-Arab, white has no superiority over black, has any superiority over good except by action. So this apparently is one of the what do you call it? And for many years, this was quoted on Wikipedia without a primary source. Now, it has become very popular because it's found in Musnad Ahmad, greatest Sahih, and Arab has no period. So this version is correct. No superiority over non-Arab, and also while there is no superiority nor blackness is white except in good action. Now, however, this author's rendition also includes some lines about the treatment of women, and it's very sanitized. There's also an author, SFH Zaidi, a later Pakistani Islamist scholar on sermons in his 1987 book. He wrote this version too. So, we have a lot of the PC stuff, has been sort of fabricated much later, so to speak. So it does, what do you call it, beg the question that, is this even authentic to begin with? Like the black, what do you call it, superiority, white superiority, because I do doubt the authenticity of the hadith, because I don't think this hadith, it's not in the primary hadith though, in the Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and none of the primary Sahih hadiths. But it's, where is it? Where's the human rights? There we go. But it's definitely like, used in other sources, which are relatively recent. I don't want to read this word. Okay. According to Islam, God has given them. Therefore, no man should be discriminated against in his place of birth. Malcolm X. Okay, interesting. He mentions Malcolm X, the famous leader of the African N-words in America, who had launched a bitter struggle against the white people of America in order to win civil rights for his black compatriots. When he went to perform pilgrimage and saw how the Muslims of Asia, Africa, America, Europe, and those different races, languages, and colors skin were wearing one dress, and he were hurrying towards the Kaaba, offered prayers. Then he realized that this was the solution and not what he had been trying to seek or achieve. Here's what he actually thought was that he was initially was part of a group that preached black supremacy. What he discovered was that the Islamic world was a lot more diverse.
I will also say one thing regarding Nation of Islam.
Yes.
I am very loath generally to say that a group does not belong to Islam when they claim to be Muslim.
Yes.
But the Nation of Islam is so out there that I have no issues when you claim they are not part of Islam, because they are so non-mainstream.
You know what's interesting? Someone in a video done by a professor in a video by Religion for Breakfast when he was doing Islam. He said that you can count Nation of Islam as part of Islam.
Yes, because the general trend in the religious studies is not to impose your definitions upon a religion and say this is not or this is. I have actually argued that in order to study a phenomenon, you actually have to have some definitions of it, because otherwise everything becomes it.
And I've read about the Seven Circle Quran too. You've heard of the Seven Circle Quran?
No.
Oh boy, and I've heard of. Have you heard of Noble Drew Ali and all these figures?
No.
They should be an interesting video to do on that as a future video idea. We can see, are they Islamic or not Islamic? You know.
So, I haven't gone into detail of the Nation of Islam. I've just read about them generally, and immediately things came up. I remember that was so different that I just thought no.
I wouldn't be surprised, like you would be like, okay, this is way too far-fetched off, because apparently they're also part of a list of UFO religions, I'm guessing.
What?
Yeah, apparently there's some UFO claims as well too. So I don't know.
That was what I mentioned with weird, but we might do a video on them in the future because
no, they're definitely an interesting group. And there's a group within that called the Nation of Gods and Earth or something like that. Apparently, there's I actually met someone from said group, and he said, we are all Allah. And he said, arm, leg, arm, head is what Allah stands for.
Jesus Christ. I just took the name of Jesus in vain. I'm not even a Christian, but in here I think this is so major shirk. It just makes me Jesus.
This is shirk right there. I love how today Jinny's not being a devil's advocate for something like this, because it's like, okay, this is just weird.
When you make me question you without being the devil's advocate, you are too out there.
Yeah. It was way out there, this claim. Again, keep in mind, I haven't seen it written somewhere. This was a claim by the individual who belonged to said group, by the way. So I had an interesting conversation with him. So this is what popped up in this conversation. So it was something that I learned, something. So, and of course, they claim to be from the Moors. So it's descendant of the Moors or something like that from North Africa, and the Spanish Moors and all that stuff. So it does get interesting, the conversation. But let's proceed to the. I'm so sorry, Ginny. I'm making you cringe. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So now here he says this claim. Today, a number of non-Muslim thinkers who are free from blind prejudice openly admit that no other religion or way of life has solved this problem with the same degree of success that which Islam has done so. What? The problem of race was solved by Islam? What? Ginny, can you
I will not even defend this. Just let's continue because it's wrong.
Yeah, it's like, especially the claim non-Muslim thinkers. There's a lot of non-Muslim thinkers who disagree with this. Oh man, let's just continue. Okay. The right to cooperate and on Islam has prescribed a general principle paramount to the university. Cooperate with one another for virtueful and heedfulness, and do on God cooperate with one another for the purpose of vice and aggression. This means that the man who undertakes a noble righteous, irrespective of whether he's living in the North Pole or the South Pole, has a right to expect support and active cooperation from other Muslims. I wonder how they would pray in the North and South Pole. I'm not going to lie. On the contrary, he who perpetuates deeds of vice and aggression, even if he is our closest relation or neighbor, does not have the right to win our support and help in the name of race, country, and language, nationality, nor should he have the expectation that Muslims will cooperate with him or support him. Nor is it permissible for Muslims to cooperate with him. The wicked and vicious persons may be our own brother, but he is not one of us. He can have no help or support as long as he does not repent or reform his ways. On the other hand, man who is doing deeds of virtue and righteousness may have no kinship with Muslims. Muslims will be his companions, supports, or at least his well-wishers. Now, Quran 5:2, does it even say that? Because it's I am Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 2, says here, what do you call it? Let me just, because he claims cooperate with one another, but let's see the actual verse. What does the actual, because he does quote it in parts, which I've found this to be an annoying trend. Like, don't quote it in parts, quote the entire thing. Okay, at least with the
mining is a thing that these people love.
Yeah. Now, I'll read the corpus. Ginny, you can actually kind of read the Arabic and you can see if there's any disconnect. O who you believe, do not violate the rights of Allah, and not the month, the sacred, and not the sacrificial animals, and not the garlanded, and not those coming to the house, the sacred, seeking bounty for their Lord. And when you come out of Ihram, then you may hunt. So it's talking about when you come out of Ihram, and let not incite you the hatred for a people as they stop to you from Al Masjid Al Haram that you commit transgression, and help one another in righteousness and piety, but do not help one another in the sin and transgression, and fear Allah is severe in the punishment. So this kind of doesn't, it, like, he quotes just the last part, and then it's like, there's an entire, like, verse, and there's more context to it. So it's like, even as being a critic, it's like I do want to at least know, because Jalalain. Yes.
D Bodru says hi. Hi.
Oh, hi, Debodro. Hi, how are you? You should come on this show sometime. I know I should reach out to you. I can reach out to you on Facebook. We could definitely do something if you ever want to, join in the panel. But hi, D. Yeah, so in the commentaries, it says here, do not profane. Yeah, it's more onto the sanctity, the violation of the sanctity by fighting the sanctity of the Masjid al-Haram. This is what I'm guessing this is referring to. Through commerce is beautitude by resorting to him, falsely claiming this was aggregated by the Barra verse, Surah Al-Tawbah 9:4. So this is an abrogated verse. Let's see the abrogated verse. 1 second. So this verse, okay, help one another righteousness, was abrogated by 9:4. And this is just before the sword verse. Except those with whom you have a covenant among the parties, then not have they failed you, not that they have supported against you anyone. So fulfill them their treaty till their term. Indeed, Allah loves the righteous. And of course, the sword verse comes after. And this is during the sacred months, that is. You have a treaty, you have a covenant with the polytheists. So it's talking about the relationship with the polytheists. So which is interesting, that 5:2 has been abrogated. But I never, it's interesting that the verses do get abrogated. What do you call it? Oh, yeah, you just mentioned, I could mention minor issues with the Arabic text in the Quran, but they have more made grammatical errors, though this is not the Quran's fault. It is the site that has copied it. Yeah.
Because when I read this site, they, for example, had formed the Hamza wrongly. They had used the wrong form of that, and some of the endings were wrong. And I thought, this could be the. And then I looked it up. No, it was just that site. Right.
Okay. So it was just a website, that is.
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely difficult to, what do you call it?
This is one of those things where you shouldn't be so quick on the trigger to just say, "Oh, the Quran is wrong" when you see these things, because it could be just an individual error.
Hmm. Oh yeah, in terms of the grammar, right? Like the yeah.
Yeah, because when you, for example, the place grammatical endings, you have three symbols that you can put on the endings, for example, on words to give the grammatical endings, and those can change, and sometimes you put the wrong ending
Yes.
by mistake, and
Right.
it was issues of that level, and also the form of certain word letters, hamza in this case, should change according to certain standards which they didn't follow there. I've seen Arabs do this in regular script,
Right.
also doing these mistakes. So they are very basic mistakes, but that.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't anything. I think I looked it up. I looked on another site where it
Yeah,
was
but it's not a
right.
major error or anything like that. Like it's not.
No, it was just a minor grammatical error. It's still
Oh.
understandable.
Yeah, no,
It's just someone that has, someone, for example, writes in, for example, writes an I in English,
Yes.
but forgets the dot.
Oh.
So it looks like an L.
Oh, that's very minor. Very, very minor.
It's that level of stuff.
Oh, it's very minor. And also you can kind of see it's an I even without the dot from time to time. So it's not a huge error in itself. But yeah, no, thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the verse isn't exactly referring to not supporting a vicious person, support the good person. It's more of in regards to the relationship in regards to the Masjid al Haram, that is. So it the message, the context is very different from chapter 5, verse 2. And also on top of that, the verse gets abrogated because it's talking about the relationship of Muslims with the polytheists of Mecca. So, you're kind of like, this guy is kind of wrong here. How many pages do we have left? Jesus. Okay, try to get through this as much as we could. Yeah, rights of citizens in an Islamic state. Any thoughts on this, Mr. Ginny?
We should just go on.
All right.
At this point, I'm feeling that the term al-Samud does not no longer apply to God, but to Mai.
By who? To whom?
To me, having to endure this.
Oh yes. And we'll also apply the term merciful as well to you because you're being very merciful. In the address the Prophet delivered on this farewell Hajj, he said that your lives are properties to forbidden till you meet your Lord. Of course, he's going to mention the last sermon. Anyone who kills a believer deliberately will receive his reward, a sentence to live in hell forever. God will be angry with him and curse him. Yeah, you can definitely. This is kind of authentic, where you cannot kill a believer, a believing Muslim. That is that I do, and prepare for it. The Prophet has also said about the dhimmis, the non-Muslims, that one who kills a man under a covenant will not even smell the fragrance of paradise. Is this true though? Like, was this a hadith? Like, Jenny, do you record a hadith in a Bukhari? The one who kills a man. Actually, let me just double check.
Yeah, I mean, I am not certain.
Yeah, one who kills the.
And by the way, I said it wrong. It isn't as-Samud. It is as-Samad.
As-Samad, okay.
It's another form of the same concept. It's the persevering one.
Right. Hadith. Now, where is this? Oh, it's for someone who's pledged protection.
I messed it up with Asabur, the patient one.
Right. Okay. 1 second. I'm just gonna share the hadith, the actual hadith. So this is in regards to chapter of blood money. The Prophet said, whoever killed a muahid, a person who is granted the pledge of protection by the Muslims. Again, this is a condition. Shall not smell the fragrance of paradise, though its fragrance can be smelt at a distance of 40 years of travel. So again,
by the way, it isn't a mu'ahid, it's a mu'ahad.
Oh, mu'ahad. That's the term.
Yes, they had again they messed it up there. It's because mu'ahid is the one giving the pledge. The mu'ahad is the one having been given the pledge.
Yes.
It's active versus passive participant.
Yes. So in other words, like it's forbidding the kill of non-Muslim who is granted again. This is what we have to say, granted the pledge, that is, of protection.
Yes.
Now, when he says a dhimmi, it doesn't say dhimmi. It says non-Muslim under a pledge of protection, that is.
Yes.
So
it's not the same as a dhimmi. It's usually this is connected to diplomats and other people. At least that was in the case in the Abbasid period.
Because a dhimmi, by definition, is a Christian or a Jew living.
Yes, because a mu'ahad is rather either an ally active on your
mu'ahad.
ground.
So his use of the word dhimmi is incorrect, but it's a mu'ahad. That's what.
Yes, mu'ahad, and that could be the Mawali, which were allies or allied groups that sometimes weren't Muslim, or it could be diplomats.
Yes.
Mursalun, those sent out to you, or also messengers sent to you. Because if you kill, because when you get a messenger, it's kind of like diplomatic standard that you do not kill them.
Yeah, and it's like don't shoot. It's kind of like don't shoot the messenger.
Yes.
Kind of an idea. It's a very similar to that idea.
Yes.
So in this regard, like this would make sense actually, especially in those days. It would actually make sense to not kill the messenger or a diplomat. That is. And
so
actually,
those are promised special protection.
And also, you did
by default.
I know.
But and the term mu'ahad.
Yes.
Also signifies a time limitation on it.
Right.
Rather than muwa'ad, which is promised someone something.
So
and it's not.
Mu'ahad has a time limit.
Or ma'ud. It's a promised one. That is,
Interesting. So the mu'ahad has the time limit on this. And
yes.
Yeah, so definitely
that other terms for promise, such as ma'ud, does not have.
Yeah, so that's where we, at the end of this, his translation saying that it's a dhimmi, that's not correct. We're talking about a mu'ahad, so to speak. Now he does say that Islam prohibits homicide, but only allows one exception: that the killing is done in the due process of law, which the Quran refers to as be al-haq, with the truth. So
can be translated as truth, but it can also be translated as with the right.
Okay.
Because you also use it in hukuk al-insan, hukuk being the plural of haq, and hukuk is hukuk al-insan, and al-insan is human rights.
and
Or rights of the human.
rights of the human. And it's funny too because like Islamic law, like especially with the what do you call it? You do have, I know some of the Sharia fiqhs do state death sentences for, let's just say, um, you know, LGBTQ plus members like gay people.
Yes.
It does have a death sentence for apostates.
Aliwation.
Yes, and even for male apostates, especially, it has a death sentence.
Yeah.
Female
Al-Murtadun.
apostate, yes, and female apostate can be tortured to repent. That is, unless it doesn't work. I think in the Shafi school, she's tortured or something like that. I'm guessing. I might be. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but yes, that is, a murtad has to be. There's a death sentence on a murtad. So when he claims like when the law demands it, like I love how he willfully ignores that, and it's obvious that only a court of law can decide whether the execution is being carried out with justice or without justification. However, there have been cases, again, a precedent in Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, where Muhammad did allow a man who had murdered Asma bint Marwan, and I think she was a lady poet, that whoever can, he goes and murders her, and then when he comes back, and Muhammad actually forgives him, like there should be no recourse for you. So there is precedent for someone killing someone who insults Muhammad, that is. So that precedent's already set in Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham. So like you can also use that as justification to go commit murder too, in the sense that you would have someone like that guy who murdered a man who was allegedly being in Peshawar's court, actually inside the courthouse. He came inside, um, he shot the Ahmadi man who claimed prophethood or something like that, because allegedly Prophet Muhammad came into his dream and told him to kill this man. So this is sort of like what is in the Sirah kind of encourages this behavior of going out and carrying on vigilante justice. So this is an obvious fact that the author of this article does not mention. And by the way, today's the last episode. I'm actually going to deal with this article because this article is very annoying.
Yes, even I feel, even if we haven't even done half of it, I'm done with this.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I know we have the last 20 minutes. So what Nick and I will do a pre-recorded segment for this article, that is, so that we can kind of finish it tomorrow. Because next week I won't be able to do an episode because I have a wedding to attend. Nick might be available, but yeah, we'll we'll let you know in the channel. But anyway, on the corner block and decide when. In the case of war or insurrection, finally mentions war, a just and righteous government alone, which follows Sharia or the Islamic, can decide whether war is just or unjust, whether taking a life is justified or not justified. These weighty decisions cannot be left in the hands of a court which has become heedless to God and is under the influence of the administration. A judiciary like this may miscarry justice. It's a very general term, nor can the crimes of the state be justified on the authority of the Holy Quran or traditions, hadith, when the state murders its citizens openly and secretly, without hesitation or on the slightest pretext. But this happens because they're opposed to unjust policies and actions or criticize it for its misdeed, and also provides protection to its hired assassins who have been guilty of the heinous crime of murder of an innocent person, resulting in the fact that neither the police take any action against such criminals nor can any proof of witnesses against these criminals be produced. But it's just that you're not making any reference to this. It's like you're just making claims. The very existence of such a government is a crime, and none of the killings carried out by them can be called execution for the sake of justice in the phraseology of the Holy Quran. I mean, it's debatable especially in the context of the Islamic law, it's very debatable. Along with security of life, Islam has, with equal clarity and definiteness, conferred the right of security of ownership of property, as mentioned earlier, with reference to the address in the final Hajj. On the other hand, the Quran goes too far as to declare that the advantage of people's possession or property is completely prohibited unless they are acquired by lawful means, as permitted by laws of God. I think in terms of like possession of property, this was a big thing in the Quran. I think especially of orphans. Like I do recall. Wouldn't you? What would you say to that, Ginny?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
this is quite the theme of the Quran itself.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also I would you remember Moose? We didn't do this on a show, but we did it afterwards, where we looked through various old examples of Germanic law.
Yes.
And you kind of like got, oh, Islamic law seems much better in comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a law that was several hundreds of years after this.
Yes.
And, you know, for example, the seizure of wealth by false and illegal means, it is defined as, you know, you should... Oh, sorry, I was sneezing. You should be able to, you know, inherit things in peace, and your relatives shouldn't get their hands on it.
Yes.
By any sort of guardianship or something. It's guaranteed for you.
Yeah.
In Germanic law, that wasn't the case. Many of your relatives could even get a claim on your inheritance through challenging you to a duel.
Oh, really?
And remember, yes, and also imagine if you're just a small kid.
Oh, fuck, you're screwed pretty much.
Yes.
You're screwed. So I think in this case, Islam was seen as a weird improvement on the existing system, at least in terms of...
I don't know if it was an improvement over other types of Middle Eastern law, but it was certainly not a bad law for its time.
For its time, yeah, because here it says, and do not eat your properties amongst yourself wrongfully and present it to the authorities that you may eat a portion from the wealth of the people sinfully while you know. Now, this translation said, do not consume one another's wealth unjustly or send it in bribery to the rulers in order that they may aid you. Consume a portion of the wealth of the people is a sin while you know. It's unlawful. So this is also like more so in regards to corruption, that is.
Yes, but it is also, you know, do not eat up the wealth of those within your house out of...
Yes.
Bottle is kind of hard to translate here, but in either futility, but it could also mean in a legal sense as without due cause.
Yes. Because I know in terms of inheritance, it was pretty big on, you know, the orphan getting the property, that is.
Yes, and the important thing here is that you can only take from the inheritance that you are the guardian of.
Yes.
For example, say that a kid loses all his parents, and he's left without any, you know, and he inherits everything. Then a relative must step in as a guardian for this kid, but he can't take the wealth unless it comes to such a degree that he must take a bit of that wealth, because otherwise he would not be able to care for the kid.
Yes.
Because it will threaten his family's livelihood. That is one of those exceptions.
Yeah, especially because that wealth is for the kid, right? So it is...
Yes.
Technically, you're using it from the kids for...
But if you take that from that wealth in order to feed that kid, you have to do it only in a case of emergency.
Right. Okay. So and
only for that kid.
Yes, and not so much not anybody else.
They had very strict laws about inheritance and such, and they also even made exceptions in order to secure inheritance even further. For example, even normally, if you would read the sources, you couldn't inherit matrilineally from your mother, down
Interesting.
to daughter, but you could in practice. Even there was even ijma on this. Even if
yeah, go ahead.
Even if it isn't in the sources, it developed a consensus around this, because you had situations where, for example, the entire you had, for example, families that were connected to a waqf. For example, a mosque had a waqf, an endowment that they leased out to a family by a familial contract that will last several generations.
Yes.
And thus the descendants should have the right to that. That right still remained even if all the male relatives died out, and would thus be inherited matrilineally.
Right.
Rather than through,
and this is like
be broken.
So this was in practice the ijma of like all schools of thought, that is?
I'm not sure about the Hanbalis or the Malikis, but at least the Shafis and Hanafis did this during the Abbasid times. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So there was consensus in those, at least in those fiqhs, that is.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with the Malikis are that they are, as a school, they are split. The Malikis are less a legal tradition and more several smaller legal traditions all over the place.
Yeah.
And the Hanbalis, they usually don't concern themselves with laws that are outside of a very small preview.
Interesting.
So they actually they left usually room for other interpretations, other views, which meant that it was probably up for other institutions to decide these things. Because the Hanbal had this idea that you should only make Islamic law about those things that are directly in the sources. The other things should either be permissible or unpermissible by other premises that aren't related to Islam.
Yeah, because like I know, that's where
keep it to a few sources, keep it simple, and keep it straight and literally. That's pretty much Hanbal's view.
And this is where like also the Salafist concept comes from.
Yeah, because they're neo-Hanbalists, but even then, they would Hanbal would probably disagree with them a lot about certain things. Hanbal was actually a rather, I would even call him a sympathetic character, really.
I know he was this. He was kind of a martyr too.
Yeah,
in a way.
He was also one of the most badass of the characters in Islamic history.
Yeah, I know
when he get
executed or something like that, right?
Yeah, he got tortured, and he more or less when asked, "Are you going to, it was something he got tortured, and they asked him to, do you give it up? No, and will you stop wasting my time?"
Oh man, this is some guy, man, some guy.
He also went around and
go ahead.
He also went around and lived as a faqir, or as a poor person, or he's one of the first examples of the faqir tradition within Sufism.
Right.
Also, ironically enough.
Interesting. So he lived a very poor life, like pretty much like a Greek scholar, if anything, or Greek.
Yes, he was kind of like Diogenes, if you have heard about him.
What's that?
The Greek philosopher that lived like a dog, but not quite that extremely, but still.
Yeah.
Hannibal was a guy that didn't give up about what others thought about him.
Right.
But he wasn't like an asshole or anything. He kind of went around and actually helped people.
Yeah.
And he actually argued that a lot of the issues with many of the other scholars were that they were rich people that went to around and pontificated to everyone else instead of actually interacting with people.
Yeah, so he does come across as a very sympathetic figure of sorts. And
yes,
he is an interesting character. We'll also go through his character too. So I definitely love to go through him. Again, future few episodes we plan. Humble himself, Nation of Islam from the United States, and see if the UFO claim is even true or not. And sorry, Jimmy.
D. Bodriu said something in the comments. Can you explain Surat? Can you guys explain Surat Al-Baqarah verse?
Oh dear, how is easily Allah brings the dead by showing you his signs that you may understand. Oh, you want me to do an episode on that? Like, I mean, I could do an episode on that. That how to solve murder in what do you call that, or how to solve a murder mystery. Isn't that we could actually do? Because there's something in the Bible about that as well too. Because you have to find a golden cow. Well, actually, no, you have to find a golden cow here too, technically. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic that we could actually, explain that verse. But anyway, actually, you know what? Like, yeah, we'll just wrap up this protection of honor, this section. How far? Yeah, it's not very long, and then I'm kind of already sick of this article. I'm sorry. The second important right of the citizen, the protection of their honor. In the address delivered in the occasion of the fair, even the address itself is kind of doubtful of its sources, to which I have referred to earlier. The Prophet did not only prohibit the life of property, also encroachment of their honor. Respect and chastity were forbidden to one another. The Holy Quran lays out in 49:11 to 12. You who do believe, do not that a set of people make fun of one another, do not defame one another, do not insult, and do not backbite or speak of one another. Okay. And then he makes a reference to defamation. It is true that someone has attacked your honor with another person. Okay, let's see the word. Actually, let me just finish this. Sorry, guys. According to Islam, if it is proved that someone has attacked the honor of another person, again by 4 witnesses, then whether or not the victim is able to prove a respectable person, because the culprit will in any case get his due punishment. But the interesting fact about Western law of defamation is that the person who files a suit for defamation has first to prove that he is a man of honor and public esteem, and during the interrogation he is subjected to scurrilous attacks, accusations, innuendos of the defense counsel to such an extent that he earns more disgrace than the attack on reputation itself when he is knocked on the door of the court of law. But we need to do this stuff. What is he saying? We have to actually interrogate to see whether he's actually this is the purpose of due course. Each side, you're guilty and you're innocent until proven guilty. And then the defense counsel of the person, his job is literally to defend the person whom you state has accused you of the crime. On the top of that, he has also produced such witnesses as would testify due to the defamatory court. Yeah, of course, that's the court process. The accused stands disgraced in their eyes. Good gracious, what a subtle point of law, and what an adherence to the spirit of law. Okay, how is this unfair? Like, your honor is not exactly getting destroyed. You're just addressing it. It's not further, what is he thinking like? He's thinking in 17th, 16th century mindset. Like, when there's a defamation case, and defamation has a high reward too, by the way. You can get more money on defamation cases if you win a defamation case. And unfair and unjust. Oh, how can this be unfair and unjust law when compared to divine law? Islam declared blasphemy as a crime, irrespective of the fact that whether the accused is a man of honor or not. What the fuck? and whether is the words of used for have actually disgraced the victim or harmed his reputation in the eyes of the world. Dude, blasphemy law is against Muhammad or Islam. According to the Islamic law, the mere proof of the fact
Mose, why to be the devil's advocate here?
what?
Mose, you're forgetting something. The only one that actually deserves honor must be the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him.
Damn it, Jimmy! I'm gonna get my stick. I'm gonna dip it in Zamzam water and I'm gonna beat you with that stick. Where is that Zamzam water? Oh man, like that honor. Oh, like damn it! And also, yeah, advocate, because in the court of law we could use devil's advocate. You can be a devil's advocate as much as you want. Now he says, according to Islamic law, the mere proof of the fact that the accused said things which, according to comments, would have damaged reputation and honor is enough for the accused to be declared guilty of death. No, you have to actually like go due process. You have to actually produce evidence for this. You can't just, you have to also address the evidence itself too. That's why there's due process. You address the evidence. The judge addresses the evidence, or if you have a jury that sees the evidence and decides on the fact of law. Like he makes this point of like Western law. And by the way, when he says Western law, there's Canadian law is very different on defamation. US law, depending on the state, is very different. And British law, sure, similar, but has some very different requirements. Now, what do you call it? And a defamation suit is usually, it's a civil suit, that is, usually. And it has to cause you monetary damage too, of some sorts as well. Like I think you have to prove the damage that was done to your reputation. And not only that, defamation, it has to be a false fact. It has to be a false fact. If it's true, if the person proves, the culprit you accuse of proves that what he said was true, then you lose your defamation case. So, you have to assess these things. And also he mentions this verse, 49, 11, 12. Let's see if it's even talking about defamation. 49. Again, we're back to the apartments, Jinny. We're back to the apartments.
Hujra can also mean in modern Arabic room.
Yeah, room.
But
again.
that's also a more modern meaning.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you believe not ridicule people of another people because they may be better than them, and let not women of other women, perhaps they may be better than them, and do not insult yourselves, and do not call each other by nicknames. Wretched is the name of the disobedience over faith, for device they are the wrongdoers. Now, in the following verse, it says this: O you who believe, avoid much of the assumption, indeed, some of the assumption, and do not spy, and do not backbite. It's just saying, do not backbite. I remember this verse. Would like one of you to eat the flesh of a brother dead? Nay, you would hate it. I remember this verse. It's like eating the flesh of a dead brother. And actually, somebody did a video on this.
I mean,
it's actually pretty brilliant.
It's a manner of speech.
Yeah, I know. And somebody did a video on this. I was in Pakistan, and I do admire it. Like they were talking shit about somebody, and then the next video, it's like eating a dead body, basically. Someone was
actually, it's more like consuming.
Really,
the body of, or the flesh of one's brother.
Oh man.
But it's I mean, this has to do with various associations with lachem and the body being kind of like a stand-in for one's honor.
Yes.
So, this probably goes into that.
Yeah, and it's definitely what do you call it? Interesting, because how the Quran, however, uses something like similar, like insulting language, Because it says here, do not ridicule people of another people. But then you contradict yourself by saying something like this. The likeness of those who were entrusted with the Torah, then they don't bore it, like the donkey who carries books. Wretched is the people who deny the signs of Allah, and Allah does not guide the people wrongdoers. Now, why are they calling the people of the Torah donkeys carries books? Like in that verse, like you just contradicted yourself there. That don't insult each other, but then there's this. Like you're insulting people of the Torah. That is like
Yahmilo asfaran. All
Yeah.
right. It isn't even books, it's scriptures.
Right. It's the donkey carrying scriptures.
Yes, himar. Yeah.
Okay. It's a donkey carrying scriptures. That's pretty insulting though.
Yes.
Pretty much an insult. So yeah, this is a very
Because books is kitab.
Yes. And
as far as scriptures.
Yeah, and here's what D says. Yeah, the article doesn't address what if what was said was the truth, and it was never addressed in the article itself. That what if someone who accuses the honor, like, just what if he was telling the truth, So this is not addressed here. Like defamation isn't addressed. Like what do you call it? The second right to protect their honor in the address. Earlier, the Prophet did not only, but also encroachment upon their honor, respect, and chastity. Like, but what if this encroachment was the truth? What if they're actually telling you the truth, and it's like you have this honor system that you're just attacking the honor of somebody. It's a bit of a contradiction right there. So it's a bit weird, like how he claims this. Anyway. We're gonna stop here. I apologize. I will probably cover the rest of this, but I'm just really annoyed with this article overall because it's just he's making again, look, he's attacking Western law of defamation. Because according to Islam, if it is proved that someone has attacked the honor of another person, then irrespective of the fact whether or not the victim is able to prove himself a respecter, the couple will in any case. So this makes it unfair because the victim has to be able to prove himself. Like, what the hell is this? That's stupid.
Yes, guilty until proven innocent. The best law method.
Yeah. It's like, you again, in case of defamation, right? In the case, if you have to prove the person who accused you guilty. So you have to establish yourself as to why that person, what they said was incorrect. So that's how defamation works. And then this guy's saying the opposite. Oh, regardless whether the victim cannot prove himself or not, the other person gets the punishment. What the hell is that? Like, that's so stupid. But yes, Jenny, any last words?
I'm so glad that I will not be dealing with this document anymore.
Yeah, well, we'll try to wrap this up quick.
My devil's advocate energy cut out in the middle of this document.
I know.
And it wasn't even the middle. It was like in a quarter of this document.
Yeah, very early in the document. Because here's what he does. Like, he quotes these verses, but then he only quotes a part of it. That's what I noticed. And it's only the end part or the middle part, but never gets the full context of the verse. And I'm playing more devil's advocate than you. I'm sounding more pro-Islamic in this case. It's weird. And it's like you have to get the context of why the verse was revealed.
Yeah, it almost feels like it is so bad. It almost feels like you have to defend Islam against this guy.
Like, I'm defending Islam. It's like, no, context, please, context, guys. So, yeah, and I'm telling him out of context. I'm using the term out of context. But yes, by the way, you gave me this idea of the Surah Al-Baqarah murder mystery. Thanks, D. Also, you should come on the show as well. Any of the guys, thank you for joining today's show. I might also ask a recent Abdullah Samir's channel. Do check out Abdullah Samir's channel. A good friend of mine has also done an interview as an ex-Muslim, and he talks about his journey, Tariq El-Had. And do check out the channel, Abdullah Samir's channel. I don't have the link to the video, but Abdullah Samir has restarted doing his work. And also, by the way, check out Culture Jinny's channel too. I love his videos. I'm a weird mark for his videos because I was watching his video on like the differences between Roman religion and Greek religion, and it was quite done well because he emphasizes not only just differences between in terms of names, but how they were applied, the concepts, like how Rome applied the concept of gods and how the Greeks applied the concepts of gods.
Yes.
So very interesting video. He also did a video on like the what's that item called that you carry to the Kaaba? There was that practice. What was it?
The mahmal.
The mahmal, yes. So he does an excellent video on the mahmal, and you should check that out as well. It's an ancient practice, and see the what do you call it? The applicability of that practice. Like, it was very useful in the ancient world. Today, it's not applicable because again we have airplanes and faster communication and stuff too. So do check out that video.
And those that have tried to restart it have run into political issues.
Yeah,
of
course, and also, even the president and prime minister of Pakistan has done a quick Umrah or Hajj, and it's done very, very fast. Or he's even done a quick visit to different shrines too. It's not that difficult to get it done this day and age. So it's,
actually, they're not Pakistan, but there was some other nation in the Middle East, an Arab country, that tried to send a mahmal, but it was hindered.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yes. Thank you, D. Yes, sorry guys, if it was we stuck on that article for too damn long. But yeah, we'll try to bring something new for next episode. Like, I'm kind of done with this damn article. So yeah, I also wanted to, like, I presented 3 ideas. Future video on Israel-Palestine conflict. What was that other one again? The Nation of Islam. We can't forget that. We can't forget to make Jinny cringe. And Imam Humble himself, and of course we'll do the murder mystery according to both Quran and Bible as well. Subhanallah. All right, take care everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye.